Hello, everybody. This is Ben over at Empire's Comics here in Sacramento, California. As you guys know, we have our Google Hangout interviews that not only interview people locally here that are creative, but we also like to interview people that we can't necessarily get down to the shop. And tonight we have for you Terry Moore. We're very happy to have you down here because your work is something that I really look forward to when it hits the comic book shelves. And I'm a relative newcomer to your work. I never actually read the original Strangers. I'm sorry.
Blasphemy.
It is, it's very strange because when I think about comic creators, independent creators that have left their mark, and we ask people some of their favorites, your stuff, especially Strangers, is always brought up within the first few breaths. So it's something that I thought I should always read. It was a little intimidating having over 100 issues and being completed for that long. So when Echo came out, that's when I first jumped on, and I have followed everything else you've done since then. And you'll be happy to know I am catching up on Strangers before I read the new one, so
good.
that I can't jump in because it's a continuation, correct?
Yeah, you don't have to, but if you've read the first one, you get all the inside stuff on the second one. But
Okay.
You could jump in on the second one. I mean, it's made, hopefully it's written so that, it reads fine. But it's like watching the fourth Star Wars movie first.
Which is the correct thing to do. So you're telling me I should start right now and just pick up that issue because I've got them. I'm just waiting to get through the actual.
I don't care where you start as long as you read them all.
Okay, that's fair enough.
Yeah.
So it's been 25 years for Strangers in Paradise. And actually, you know what? Let's quit that. Before we even do that, that's been 25 years. What got you into the comic book industry and into comics in general, even before that?
I was a TV editor, and I had a nice job, a nice career doing that, but it's everything in editing with television and film was creative by committee. And I just kind of got to the point where I wanted to tell my own story without having to talk 100 people into it. That's a really good description of a comic book writer right there. Somebody that wants to tell a lot of stories without having to go through a lot of red tape for bigger formats. So I discovered the self-publishing movement. It was about 1992. And I walked into a comic book store with my little boy trying to get him to read. Classic story. And that worked, by the way. And I saw the indie stuff. I saw all the black and white comics that were coming out back in 1992. And I thought, I think I can do that because I had a lot of amateur cartooning in my background. And I thought, well, I'm as bad as some of these comics, so I think I should. I remember picking up one comic, and it looked like it took him 21 pages to light a cigarette and just talk, and I thought, well, I can write that. I know I can draw enough to do an indie comic. And I had avoided comic books my whole life as a career idea because I couldn't draw like Gil Kane or Jim Lee or Frank Miller. I was never going to be a Kurt Swan. So, but I liked, say, Robert Crumb. And then finally, underground comics sort of made a comeback with that black and white movement, the indie comic movement. And I thought, yay, I can do something like an underground comic and maybe get a book with my name on it.
So then a couple questions. As an editor, had you done some writing yourself, or were you predominantly taking care of other people's work at that point?
Well, it was all in TV and film. So I was a video editor and film editor. So it was all visual, and I never wrote the commercials or the documentaries or anything. I was just processing other people's work. So yeah, I developed a hunger to do my own stories because in that particular job, and this is the reason I avoid working mainstream today. When I was a TV editor, you would sacrifice and binge work for 2 weeks to make somebody else's story. And after 2 weeks of no sleep and working around the clock. You have this nice product, and then they go away with it, and it's theirs. And I don't have anything to show for it, but I paid the light bill. And that's really good from a practical standpoint of, okay, you've got a job, be happy. But as a creative person, I'd been editing for 10 years and I had nothing to show for it. I had a demo reel nobody really wanted to see. So I looked at comics and I thought, you know what? I can still buy a Mark Twain book, a 100-year-old book. So the time he spent writing that book was well spent. He has something to show for his life. And I looked at comics and I thought, I can draw, maybe I should do comics. And after 10 years of working in comics, maybe I'll have something to show for it.
Yeah, and here we are 25 years later, yet again. Then that goes back to my second question then. So the art side of it, did you go to school for art? Was there something in your history there? Or did you just think, well, I've edited enough people's work. I know how to write. I know how to draw. So let's just do it.
I never took any formal training. I had this trail of miscellany. My mom always encouraged me. She wanted me to be an architect in high school. I didn't want to do this. Nobody could work with me. I was undisciplined. All I wanted to do was play in bands. So I didn't get any art training. I didn't finish college. I just drew at home when I was bored. And when I started getting tired I was in a club band, which is just, after about 5 years, that's no fun. And I was getting bored, so I took an art class from a retired Disney animator who lived in Dallas, Texas, where I was. And he taught this 13-week animation course that was based on his Chouinard Art Institute curriculum that he took back in the 40s, which I think later became Cal Arts or something. And so he taught me how to use a brush and what the circled drawings meant and what all this. He taught me the language of cartooning that I'd just been fiddling with. And it really turned me around because he kind of took me under his wing. He liked me. He offered to get me a job at Disney as a beginning guy headed for animation. And I actually went out to California to interview, but at that time, the animation world was not healthy. This is the mid 80s. Animation was not good. All they had was Secret of Nim. So I ended up taking the editing job instead. So it looked like I was headed. I didn't want to go to Disney and disappear inside all those buildings and again, be working and binge working for somebody else. So I went with editing, drew on the side, and ended up in comics later on.
And it's funny that you mentioned all you wanted to do was play music because you've got a guitar sitting in the background there. Do you still play in a band?
No, I don't play in a band. I want to, but those teenagers down the block won't return my call.
So, all right, well, let's finally get into Strangers in Paradise. So when you made your mark, what was it? It was 93 when that finally hit. What was it that made that book be what you wanted to tell? A, B, why did you decide to self-publish as opposed to going with somebody bigger right off the bat? And let's just start with those.
Okay. Once I decided I was going to make a comic book and get it printed no matter what, I wondered what story to work on. And I had this big, ambitious space opera story that I drafted out. But I thought, I'm too new at this. I don't have my chops. I shouldn't try that. I just need to do something simple. Talking heads, just medium close-up talking heads, like my comic strips, because I've been drawing comic strips for 5 years, and everything in comic strips is just, medium close-up talking heads. So I thought, well, I'll just do that. I'll just do a little relationship story for an issue or two. And just to get going, because I'm not good enough yet to draw spaceships and, world build. So that's what I did. I just drew I had been drawing comic strips about this girl next door, Francine type, who was having a boyfriend problem. He's a jerk, and he just wanted to get laid, and she wanted to know that he would stick around. So, I could write forever just on that topic alone. And it was easy for me to make the issue, but then I started off with them, and then I decided she needed a roommate. So I brought in the feisty character that I'd always been cartooning. So that's how come she ended up with Kachu as a roommate. And then, of course, when Francine has her breakdown, her roommate gets mad, goes after the other guy. Next thing you know, boom, I'm just off and running. It just started writing itself.
Okay, because it's funny that you mentioned, I was going to save this for later. You mentioned the comic strips. Somebody actually sent us a question asking why you never tried to do syndicated comic strips. It says they thought you wanted to do that.
I did. I wanted desperately to do that. And I got so close to it that the editors knew me by name. But I just could not come up with anything original. Everything I was submitting to the comic strip people, the syndicates, you could describe it as, oh, it's this comic meets that comic. And if you can say that, it's bad. It's a bad idea, because they'll say, well, why do we need Blondie meets Peanuts? We've already got Blondie and Peanuts. Come up with something new. And the problem is that I grew up loving comic strips so much that I couldn't get past my influences. Everything I did was a tribute to Charles Schulz. I was aping him constantly. I was either copying Charles Schulz or Burt Breathitt or, all of them. And I struggled with it. For 5 years, I was getting rejection slips from the syndicates, Universal, King Features, all of them. And they kept giving me chances. I actually kind of, this helped me later on when I wanted to do a comic book. Because I was running into this wall, the ceiling that I was hitting was the amateur ceiling. There's only so far an amateur can go when he's trying to be a clone of his favorite artist. You can impress your family and your friends, but the editors don't need you. We don't want a Frank Miller copy. We've already got a Frank Miller. He's perfect. Don't try to do that Sin City inking style. We're going to laugh you out of the room. Don't come up to me with another Peanuts idea that looks like a lame Peanuts. We've already got one, So that was my problem. And I began to get into the psychology of where did these singular voices come from, those creators? How did Charles Schulz make his own world? How did Burt Breathitt make his own world without copying? How did he get away from his Doonesbury influences and get to where he got, and got original? So I began getting in psychology of what it takes to be a comic creator. And the more I read about each one of them, what I found was that they do live in their own world. They have people that they love and admire, but the rest of the pack, they just ignore. They don't spend 24/7 wondering what pencil somebody else uses or what their techniques are, or they don't think in terms of tropes. They don't think in terms of Joseph Campbell hero stories and things like that. Their mind's in a whole other place, and after reading their biographies and all their interviews and everything, it really helped me understand that these individual cartoonists, they really are kind of an island. They know each other, but they live in their own world and they can't help each other. You can support each other and love each other, but there's nothing Jeff Smith can do to help my career. There's nothing Mark Waid can do to help my career. I have to do it on my own. I have to have my own thoughts, my own characters, that stuff, So by the time it was my chance to do a comic book, instead of thinking, okay, I'm going to do this guy and his family's been killed and he's on a path of vengeance and no one can stop him. instead of thinking that, or thinking, oh, okay, I'm going to take a bunch of teenagers who are misfits and they have these powers, but they're going against the system. I thought, well, what do I really like? And the only thing I really cared about was girls and relationships, whether or not, you know, your girlfriend's happy, your wife is happy, relationship stuff. So I just kind of focused on that. And once I started focusing on something that I like, the writing came easy. And the art was really crude at first. I still drew cartoony, and that's why the whole first miniseries looks really cartoony. I just had to grow up in public and mature as an artist in public, in print.
Okay, now the first miniseries was 3 issues, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, and that one was all self-published. And it's funny that you talk about how you wanted to do a book about something you enjoyed, and so relationships, girls, that came naturally. But although I haven't finished the series, going straight into issue 4, the series almost becomes something completely different.
Yes.
And so was that intentional? Was that something that you thought about, hey, can I continue this relationship book for 100 issues? I need another hook. Or was it just something where you were like, it was a natural flow for the characters that you had in mind?
I had a totally different mindset. That's amazing. You're right. You picked up on that. When I did the miniseries, that was really just like a 3-act play. Like I did that pretending to be like Neil Simon. You know, you could transcribe that miniseries and have the script for a play for a little theater group. That's all I wanted, was the laughs. But then there was a 9-month break before I started the regular series, which would have been volume 2, issue 1. After the miniseries, I had 9 months before my real series would launch. And I had time to think about it. And I thought, you know, I'm going to get a chance to have my own series with my name on it. It's my voice. And I now have a soapbox to the world. I feel more responsible for what I put out there now. So instead of just doing a quick stand-up routine, I need to write about things that I care about as well. So my first cousin, Ben, from Arkansas, he was one of the early victims to AIDS. And I thought, I want to approach this topic of AIDS, not from statistical point or an agenda, not from any of those angles, but just show the damage done to people who care. And so that was on my mind from at the beginning of the new series, that Kachu had this friend who was dying from AIDS. And then the reason why just kind of grew into the entire Darcy Parker Girl stories. So I just kind of started with that honest little seed of, you know, I really care about this. And it just ran from there. Okay.
Now, did you know where it was going to go and where it was going to end? Or was that just kind of a month by month?
You know, I've never been a real chess master. Like, I'm more like a bus driver. I know that we're all going to get on board and we're headed for New York. All that crap that happens along the way, most of it's a surprise to me too. You know, you do a road trip and things happen. So I knew that this person is going to end up over here and this person's going to end up joining in the group. But I don't know exactly how yet, you know. I'm more of a dive in. And I read that there are about half the novelists out there work the same way. There's 2 kinds of novelists: those who get a good beginning and get started on it and figure it out as they go, and the others who draft it out completely and work it out before they'll even type the first page. So I'm definitely in the close my eyes and just push off the ski run guy.
Which I think works really well for you and probably other writers as well, because one of the things when I first delved into Echo that really kind of caught me and held me and kept me coming back for all of your other series was the characters themselves. None of them appeared to be driven by some kind of plot. They didn't appear as if they weren't real people who were doing what they needed to do to get to the next page. All of it felt real, from the dialogue that they do to the actions. And as far as the art goes, one of the things that appealed to me immediately was, unlike some creators, every single person has a different look, a different body shape, a different height, different features on their face. So the characters themselves, in fact, their looks alone pulled me in. But the idea that they weren't just there to move the plot along was something that I found pretty special.
I'm character centric. To me, it's all about the characters. And I had when I was doing the miniseries, I ended up in the hospital for a week, right in the middle of the miniseries. And when I was in there, I'm creative, so I'm dramatic, and I'm thinking, oh, I may never leave. And when I was thinking, at the time, all I cared about was the people in my life. I wasn't remembering home runs or that car I used to own or, whatever. You just think about the people. So afterwards, I kind of tried to hang on to a lesson that the only thing that matters in life is these interpersonal connections between people. And that can be good or it can be bad. And then you've got a triangle. And all this other stuff that goes on, this action, like, oh, I wrecked my car last week. Well, we'll talk about that for 20 seconds and then that's over with. But, if we talk about our best friend that's gone off the rails, we could talk about that all night. So, that's where the priority are. The priority is in the people in your life. So when I was writing the stories, it was more important to me to let the characters finish the conversation, even if it would take an extra page and slow the story down. I would let the characters have the priority over, I need to keep these pages moving and show a new scene, just arbitrary rules, So I suffer from it when the books come out. People will say, oh, well, issue 18 was really slow. But in issue 18, it may be the one where you really got attached to them because they spent 12 pages talking about why they will never show you such and such in their life. And the more you know about somebody, the more you care, right? So that character information is important. And I always knew that I wanted to do stories where we went into the room a little bit early and then we stayed a little bit late after they shut the door and hear what they say when we leave. I like that idea.
Yeah, that is kind of nice, and it works well.
Thank you.
So I don't want to ruin Strangers in Paradise for myself in particular, or anyone else out there who hasn't read it. But when you finally wrapped up, there was a little bit of a lull in between the end of that and the picking up of a new series. Was there a reason for that?
Yeah, I was burned out.
Okay, after 100, what did it come to? Like 109 total?
107 total, plus some other ancillary books that were out, like a collection of the poetry, a collection of the songs, a coffee table book. Yeah, it had been like 13 years on a 6-week schedule, regular schedule every. So I was fried. I didn't have an idea in my head when I stopped. And after, I think it was almost a full year before I was put another book back out. And by the time Echo came out, I was like back from vacation. I was dying to do something. So it was
ready
good
to work on your own independent stuff. Well, actually, that was a question earlier that I asked you. So why did you decide to go completely independent rather than approach people? Was it to have that freedom you were talking about that you didn't have as an editor?
Yeah, comics is my third career. The first one was the band. The second one was the editing, and then comics. Well, in the band, I played in a cover band, and they don't go anywhere. It doesn't matter how good you are at playing Kansas or Led Zeppelin, you're not going anywhere. The second one was editing. So I'm spending my whole life sacrificing my health to produce a new batch of McDonald's commercials that nobody wants to watch. So that was a waste of time. And then I finally get a chance in comics. Well, the last thing I want to do is work with a bunch of other people on their stuff, So to me, going to DC would be like being in another cover band. Maybe I'm drawing Batman, but what's that going to get me? Can you tell me who was drawing Batman in 1988? I can't, The guys who break through and remake a character, they're rare. That's like a hit TV show. A hit TV show is rare compared to how many shows are on TV. So it's the same with the working artist. There's probably 500 working artists in comics. I don't know. And you and I could probably whip off 20 names real fast, but I mean, how many of the 20 to 25-year-old artists that are really doing the grunt work, how many can you name right now? And Artist Alley is full of them, and they have a ton of fans, and the guys are brilliant. But they've got one person to please, and that's the editor for Batman or the editor for Superman or the editor for Spider-Man. And I think if I was in my 20s and I hadn't had those other two careers, I would have been all about that Marvel exclusive, that DC exclusive, get that security, get that job, draw those comics, get your name out there. That's the way to go. But because I was an old guy getting into comics, I wanted something different. I just wanted a book with my name on it. And having your own comic book is like having your own band. It may suck, but it's yours. You know what I mean? So I'm like that old guy with the acoustic guitar down at the bar, But at least I'm not doing Jackson Browne songs. At least I'm doing my songs, and I'm okay.
That is fair. And you have done some work with the big two.
Yeah, I did. I mean, back when you could name the people who worked there in the shop, when their offices were in New York, they were part of the comics family. You knew everybody that worked at DC and everybody that worked at Marvel. Even I did, because you meet them at the shows and everybody's so nice and welcoming. I got invited to a lot of DC artist family dinners at conventions just because they're so nice and they'd see me standing in the lobby begging for quarters, But yeah, I mean, it was a real family feeling to it. And if I envy any new young artist that's coming into comics and gets a chance to work for them, I think it's a terrific opportunity. My story is different just because, of my path. But yeah, working for them is really cool. It's like how many guitarists would just kill to have a regular gig, even if it means I want to be the guitarist for one of these, a pop star or a country star. At least I'm working and I've got a good income and I can, pay the mortgage and all that, And then the beginning of your career, that's all you want.
Yeah, that's fair. And, not independent wise, you mentioned like small press, Artist Alley. There's a lot of people there. There's a ton of people putting out comic books, especially with the way it is now with the internet, having accessibility to the comic publishers. And not all of them are going to be able to make it, unfortunately. So working for the big two seems just like a sure thing that they should take.
Yeah, and some people are so good, nothing can stand in their way. I mean, the good thing about an artist is you can tell immediately if you like them or not. And I followed them. I mean, the ones who are really good, I followed just out of love for art. There's a 13-year-old kid that I've been following for 2 years who's been posting on Instagram. And he goes to the shows and everything, and all the artists know him. And we're all watching him grow up. And we all know he's headed for Marvel. I mean, it's no secret, So it's really fun to know all the artists and watch the path everybody takes. And then once in a while, you'll meet somebody who just blows you away. And he's in another world. He's in another league, and you just can't believe it.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's got to be part of the fun of it, just to see these things come up. Now, which do you prefer, writing or art? Or is it the combination of the two that's the perfect mix for you?
Well, my whole life I've been a cartoonist, which is a guy who's writing while he draws or draws while he writes. I really am drawing a novel sometimes, and I don't know. It's hard to separate the two when you're a cartoonist. If I had to give one of them up, I guess I would give up the art, because the art takes forever. I can write fast, but the art takes forever. And mostly because I'm drawing over my head. I'm not drawing in my natural style. I erase 10 times more than I draw. My natural style is very cartoony, the kind where I could just take a big pen and just go for it. But with the comic style that I use, I have to, I'll pencil a page all day. And last week, I drew the same 2 panels all day and erased them over and over and over all day, 9 hours on 2 panels. The paper was gray and glassy, and my stomach was in knots, and it was like OCD overload, and then I just couldn't win. It was a bad art day. And then the next day I came back, nailed it.
And it was done immediately, of course.
So it's just, drives you nuts. The art drives me nuts.
Well, thank you for continuing to do both the art and the writing, because you could find somebody else, but there's something about the combination of the two that works so well for your books, because even though, as you said, they're very character driven, and even though you've done everything from horror to science fiction to just real world, you lend a little bit of that cartooniness in there, some of the exaggerations, some of the over the top reactions.
It's like I've absorbed all this pop culture my whole life. And so I may run through like 500 influences in one day about the things I think about or say or joke about. Same thing with the art. After you've been looking at a whole lot of art for a long time, who knows what your influences are anymore, So one minute I'm drawing a Peanuts cloud, the next minute I'm drawing a Harriman little stick leg with the wood block foot, and then I'll draw a mountain and I'll think, oh, that looks a whole lot like, Tintin or Corto Maltese or whatever. And, every single thing looks like, I recognize it from somewhere if you want to pick it all apart.
Okay. Now, as far as the writing goes, Echo was the second creator owned, followed by Rachel Rising, Motor Girl. Each one, I don't know if you did it intentionally to test your writing skills or just to do something new, but each one really has a different genre that you're tackling. Was it done on purpose, or was it just to keep yourself from getting bored?
Well, the first series was kind of about sex and crime. And then the second series was sci-fi, and the next one was horror. And those are just topics that I'm really always been interested in. The first short story I ever wrote at the age of 11 was a horror story. I loved all the old movies, and I watched everything growing up. And as far as the science goes, I really have always been interested in why is the sky blue, and how does everything work. So after a lifetime of reading stuff, I just had a lot of junk science in my head. So I wanted to put it to use.
All right, they came out. So all of those guys, just ask me when you're in the shop, or when you're in another shop, just go take a peek. All of them are available. Are the small volumes still in print, or are we just doing omnibus now?
Let's see. That's a hard question.
I think a lot of them are out of print at this point. But why would you not get the omnibus? Because it's a heck of a deal.
I think we are not actively printing any of those old trades.
Okay.
So it's the omnibus is what we keep in print. And our warehouse is like your store. Who knows what I may have a copy of something, but I don't know.
So if anybody's missing random volume 5 of Rachel Rising, shoot you a message.
Yeah. I might have it, but I'm not printing it tomorrow. I'm not reprinting it.
Okay. And what's nice about the omnibus volumes is on a series like Rachel Rising or Echo in particular, that's it. I mean, that's it, guys. You see that you're not going to be getting 3 of them. You've got a full story contained in one spot.
Yeah, you can. It reads like it's supposed to, where it should be one. That's my book, right? I made a book. Yay.
And Okay, and then after taking a break, doing these other series, actually, before we get onto the new Strangers in Paradise, which I want to talk to you about, why you came back to it and such, Motor Girl. I have a question. So it didn't say of 10 until issue 9, I think, which caught me completely off guard. And most of your series are much longer than that. What was the deal with that? Was it supposed to be on there? Was it something that you just felt needed to end?
Before I started Motor Girl, Robin and I, my wife Robin and I, we agreed that we would keep it short, probably, in order to get in and get out, and before we hit too much of a sales slump. Because if you do a long series, the sales, especially in the teens and the 20s, can get really low. And I had experienced that with the other stuff. So we were thinking shorter, like, okay, be ready to get out at 10 if you need to. Unless you get to, order issue 1 gets this, then issue 2 and 3 and 4 kind of get a slump unless something unusual happens. And then you fight back to find out where you're really going to be between like 6 and 10. And you hope that the series catches on, there's a demand for it, and the shops can't get enough of them. 10 issues is long enough to find out. So I just didn't get the sales response that I needed to keep going. So I kept with my plan to stay at 10 and out.
Okay. I have to go back and reread all 10 issues because I didn't know what to expect at the end of it, and we're not going to tell anybody anything. It's a young woman, Sam, who comes back from the war, and she's got some PTSD. But the way you ended it caught me off guard. And in fact, I'm going to have to go back and pull out all of the issues to reread it to see how it all lines up.
Yeah, it's kind of a Rubik's Cube. I wanted to make, I like stories that you think after you've read it or watched it, the film, you're still thinking about it the next day. That's a good story. So I was shooting for that, something that would make you think about it later on. And you weren't done when you closed the book. You're still thinking about it, processing, and what have I just done?
Yeah, most definitely. What have I read? What did I miss? So I'm really looking forward to going back and rereading it to see what's in there.
And I've read the comments on the last one and what people were saying. I think this, I think that, I think I saw this, I think I saw that. And they're still not seeing everything. So yeah,
Really?
a second read will help.
Okay, that's really interesting. Well, I'm looking forward to that one. Now, coming out of Motor Girl, which is available right now, guys, 2 volumes. I believe we're going to get a nice thick one for that as well, correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
I've just been making that and soliciting it lately, so brand new.
Okay, perfect. So coming out of that, did you know you were going to go back to Strangers after this much time?
Yeah, because we've been watching this for 2 years, that we're headed for 2018 is my 25th anniversary, 1993 to 2018. So which means it's the Strangers in Paradise #1 anniversary as well. So we thought, well, we'll celebrate that Hallmark year with a new limited series. And because I knew that I wanted to come back and do another story with the girls, because I felt like Kachu was the character of a lifetime for me. She's kind of like my Sherlock Holmes or my Miss Marple, or I've got my signature character there. So you don't just you don't want to do a one and out sort of. And now when I'm looking back at the whole first series, I know it's 13 years long, but for me it's one and done. I don't want to just like. There's more story I wanted to do, because ever since the series ended in 2007, but I've continued to draw her. She's still the #1 sketch request, and everybody talks about her. And I still can't get Kachu anything online. The name is always taken. She's still very popular. So I knew that when I ended the series before, that I had this little detail that I could come back to, because, it's like a James Bond thing. You think you've got it all covered, but there was that one little thing there that you didn't sweep up. Should have cleaned that up. So I have a story to tell, and that's a good reason to come back.
Now, how long is this one going to be?
I'm planning on 10 issues,
10 issues, all right.
Unless you and I both get overwhelmed with demand.
That would be excellent. That would be
Yes,
good.
It would.
It's funny, too, that you mentioned Kachu, because all these years, I mean, I've always seen Strangers in Paradise stuff everywhere, and even just opening it and starting to read it, I always assumed that Francine was the main character. And it wasn't until we got past the first 3 issues and started to get into the story that, to me, it felt like Kachu was the main character.
She took over, which is what type A's do. I mean, she's the alpha girl. She really is very alpha. And I did start it off. It was a story about Francine. And then Kachu just took over. She'd take over the room. She'd take over your shop if she worked for you. That's just how it happens. And when I'm writing, she takes over, because her statements are so strong. It's not like I'm struggling for her dialogue. It just comes. And because once you kind of get that character so well, first of all, I don't think of her as a character. I think of her as a person. It's like you can call and talk to your best friend on the phone, even if they are halfway across the country. And on the phone, they're very real, and they're in your head now. They're talking, you're thinking. It's like that. She's in my head. She's real. I guess I should pretend to hold a phone to my ear. But I think if you can get those characters to be more like people, what their voice sounds like, what they smell like, what toothpaste they use. I mean, that kind of thing, not just like, oh, okay, he's my reluctant hero and he's going to say no 3 times and he's going to say yes. Don't do that.
Well, hopefully the sales are going well for you. We definitely ordered heavy here. We've sold really well. So anyone in the Sacramento area, there's still a couple on the shelf if you want to check it out. And as Terry said, it doesn't matter where you start, as long as you start.
Just start.
So what would be, give us a pitch. What would be a pitch for somebody who's never read Strangers in Paradise so that they know what they're getting in for, and we can get them to pick the book up?
Well, let's see. Strangers in Paradise is, nobody's ever been able to say what genre it's in. And it's not navel gazing, and it's not a chick pick, and it's not it's not a manga with a bunch of flowers or anything like that. It's about these ordinary people who are roughly our age, and extraordinary things happen to them. And it's crime, sex, comedy, drama. I don't know how to. My answer is 13 years long. I've never been good at the 1-minute pitch on it. I don't know how to explain it.
I guess the only way to explain it is pick up issue number 1, check it out. As you said, there's going to be real life, there's going to be comedy, great characters, beautiful artwork. You guys got nothing to lose. Plus, you just came out with a 25-year anniversary sketchbook.
Oh yeah, I did. Yeah, all those sketches we referred to, I took the best of them and put them in this really fat book, and that just came out. So. I didn't know that was part of the life of a comic book artist, was that you would be going to shows and doing these sketches on a regular routine. And you see the sketches from the other people and they're really great. And then it makes you want to draw better. Next thing you know, the sketching, it becomes a serious thing. And eventually you get a few that you like and you want to collect them. And that's what this is. My best from the last 20 years.
That's awesome. Do you do a lot of doodling at home, or is a lot of it done at the conventions?
I doodle a lot at home, but I try to be doodling on an actual page that has to go in the book.
All right, that's fair. So, yeah, that is fair.
But when I do get a chance, I do still like to draw. I've talked to other artists who won't do it for fun anymore, but I do still enjoy drawing, and I do find It's not just a tool. It is a great release. The thing about, I got to say this, the thing about drawing or making comics or writing or playing guitar in a band is it's such a great way to channel your emotions. Whether you're having a midlife crisis or you're 17 and you're so damn mad and you don't know why, but some heads are going to roll. So everybody in my age, everybody picked up either a pen or a guitar. And if you did, wonderful things happened in your life. You found that release and you got rewarded for it. You made comics, you got a band or whatever. So in the last 10 years, I wish that comics had been a little more popular in the mainstream of schools, so that drawing comics would have been a more viable option for the kids that felt like loners and outcasts that maybe don't feel like they have any friends. Because a lot of cartoonists I talked to said, I was such an outcast at high school. Thank God I could draw, because I would just, I could draw a better world than I was having to live in. But I guess, I would just encourage, people of all ages to try those creative outlets. Even if you don't think you're any good, it doesn't matter. It's about just getting something out, that builds up inside you, and you never know what you'll come up with. Some of the weirdest art styles that seem very crude have really caught on and become something beautiful. So you never know where to lead. I encourage people to try creativity over venting your anger at other people.
No, and actually, you beat me to it. I was going to ask you for some advice of what you would give to people, and it sounds like you already hit it. And and it sounds like you're also, in a lot of ways, saying you should do it. It's an outlet. Do it, not necessarily because you're trying to be the next Jim Lee, but do it because you enjoy it.
Yeah, because like, say you and I, maybe we want to go play tennis. But somebody else says, well, okay, but you're going to have to be as good as the people playing in Wimbledon. Well, how good are you? No, that's not what we're talking about. We just want to go, laugh and hit a tennis ball and, whatever, And that's how cartooning always should start, and comics should be. You start it for the fun of it, and just enjoy the process of, what I've noticed, I guess it was George Carlin that pointed out, everybody is born with the ability to draw and capture their imagination with a crayon. And some people choose to stop doing that and grow up. The Peter Pan syndrome, the Wendy syndrome. To be a cartoonist, you have to kind of keep in tabs with you this childlike curiosity and wonder at the world, and this let your imagination run wild and things like that. And if you can keep that little aspect of wonder in your life, it's a lot better than therapy, It's good therapy, It's you're letting something inside here that doesn't get a voice. Somehow it tends to come out in your drawings and things like that. And hey, if you want to spend the first year drawing your house burning down and,
whatever it
and
takes,
hatchets, okay, that's fine. Get it out of your system. It's better to draw it than it is to do it. So, whatever you got to do, man. But hey, at least you're doing it with a crayon and a pencil. And I still make these comics for me. When I sit down at a blank white page, I'm not trying to please somebody in Kansas that I don't know where their head's at. I'm just trying to entertain myself and hope that somebody else likes it. And because of that, I still enjoy what I do. I'm still really happy to get up on Monday and do this. I mean, think about it, man. I finally ended up with my own set of characters. And I'm the only person in the world whose job it is to write and draw Kachu. How cool is that? That's pretty damn cool.
That is pretty damn cool. So you said something here that I have a question about. You said, I'm excited to get up on Monday and start. Do you literally hold off all weekend long and come back Monday, even when the creativity is hitting you?
No, It's a lifestyle. This
Okay.
is the room I spend most time in. It's like my really happy jail cell.
So this is where it happens. That drawing board behind you,
Yeah,
where Strangers is getting drawn as we speak.
yeah. There's some old Xeroxes there. Actually, this is from the new one. You probably shouldn't be looking at that.
It's a good thing I can't see it from here then.
Yeah.
So don't worry, I can see a lot of inks and that's it. So then let me just take a peek behind you. What I can clearly see a Strangers in Paradise poster behind you. What is the other one?
Let's see here. These
Oh, it is
were
another Strangers in Paradise.
these were the posters that were on the display at the conventions. And there's another one over there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So we went to Michael's and got the big frames and put them in there and just put them up. But they've been on the wall a long time. I'd like to update them, but that's another conversation.
That's their home, so they're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So, well, thank you very much for joining us, Terry. Where can people find you online?
TerryMooreArt.com is the easiest way to remember it. But I'm also on Twitter and Instagram and Facebook. The same thing, Terry Moore Art. So hopefully easy to find.
You're pretty active on Twitter, actually. You're pretty engaging.
Yeah, because it's the people who are there are supporting the book and the work and all that, and it's an amazing thing to be able to interact with readers every single day like that. And I've been really, I guess, lucky in that I don't have a lot of negativity or anything. I've noticed that almost 99.9% of my readers all tend to be extremely highly intelligent and really good looking. So, who wouldn't want to hang out with them?
Who would have imagined? And it's got to be a completely different vibe than from before, where you had to wait for letters to come in.
Yeah.
And print letters columns. Now you can immediately interact with all of your fans, which it's kind of exciting because they're excited about it. They want to see the next issue. They want to see it coming in on a Wednesday. So it's got to be kind of fun.
You know what's really fun is that because of the internet now, somebody in Australia can read the book the same day and participate in the chat as all of us here in the States. So there used to be this incredible global lag, and there's no way to coordinate it. But the internet has brought us all to the same Wednesday, and that's really powerful. That's something to feel, the experience.
That is kind of fun. That's very fun.
During the day, I talk to the United States, and then at night I talk to Europe, and that's just as busy. And then lately, in the middle of the night, it's worked. My translations have worked their way eastward into Eastern Europe and Russia, and just blows me away where I'm talking now.
All right, you really get to connect with everybody, and on that same day. That's a lot of fun.
I mean, isn't that amazing that tonight I could be having a conversation with somebody in Russia who's read my book, or somebody in New Zealand. I mean, it just blows me away. It's not like the only people I'm ever going to talk to about my book, I just might happen to have to meet in person on the street. It's like if you don't meet them on the street, you'll never know. I felt that way about the newspaper cartoonists. They never got out much, and they didn't have the internet, and they never knew how much they were adored sometimes,
No, it made it a little harder too, because at least with comic book conventions, you could go there and the fans would flock to you.
Yeah. And the comic strip fans didn't. I knew of comic strip artists that were good and had good stuff, and they would go to comic book conventions, but nobody knew who they were. And so they did not have a good experience. And I thought, I kind of felt bad for them, We're lucky with comics that, we've really embraced technology and made it our own.
We have, and one of the things not unique, but one of the things that I really love about the comic book community is how invested we are in our creators. It's not just a book that hits the shelves. We want to know about who draws it, who writes it, who inks it. It's neat because the conversations in the shop are just endless.
That's amazing. That's modern, because back in the day, when I was a little kid, I didn't know who drew any of that stuff. I didn't know who Kurt Swan was, or I knew the difference between their looks, but I didn't know those guys. And the first time I ever even got a glimpse that there was a bullpen was when I would read a Stan Lee letter where he would just kind of, he would just kind of riff on painting this visual picture of, oh, we're all in one room and we're all a bunch of nuts, So I love that idea, and that's when I started thinking, oh, okay, so how many guys are there drawing and which guy draws what? And that's the first time I ever wondered about it, I was an old man before I realized who, Gil Kane was and what he did and all that, I mean, I didn't know until I was meeting him at conventions later on. Oh, you did that? I didn't know that. Jerry Robinson? Wow.
Well, it does make it easier on the newer and older fans, because with the internet now, I just type in anything and it pops up.
Well, and contrast that to what I said earlier about, okay, there's this 12-year-old kid that I'm watching coming from 50 miles away towards the industry. He's living and breathing it. That's all he wants to do. He wants to work for Marvel. He wants to draw Spider-Man. This kid's on a one-track mind, and he's met every artist. Everybody knows him. So now we're just watching it from a mile away, and it's so different than the way it used to be. It's cool. It's an improvement in life.
It is. I really enjoy the industry. I enjoy the people involved, the creators and the fans. So, well, thank you very much, Terry. I don't want to keep you any longer because you need to go finish those pages.
Yes, I do.
and then hopefully we'll have a nice long run on Strangers in Paradise, and hopefully you've got something else in store for us too. One last question, since you've already hit horror, science fiction, crime, what is there a genre you would like to do?
Yeah, the next one that I have lined up, unless I think of something better, but this one's been waiting its turn very patiently, is a fantasy story.
Oh, that was kind of a no-brainer. All right.
What's left?
Out of the big ones, that most definitely is it. And I lied. There was another question I didn't get to that I really wanted to, because I want to know the answer to this too. Tony asks, can we expect more characters to show up in Strangers in Paradise? Like he says he saw Earl on the cover for a new Strangers, and Aunt Libby, of course, goes back and forth. Are we going to get more of that in his 10 issues, or potentially even more?
Yeah, for sure.
We are cool.
I kind of have this attitude of, like, I told you all those other stories just so I could tell you this one, and it all kind of zippers together now. So
all right.
I'm trying to bring all my pieces together.
Well, thank you for doing so. I will continue to read. I've enjoyed everything you've done, and I know I will enjoy the rest of Strangers. Honestly, so far, I think my favorite is Motor Girl. Echo was my favorite, but I think Motor Girl is my... Well, let me read it again, and then I'll tell you.
Okay.
then I'll let you know if it's still my favorite. But guys, make sure you check them out. Go to the website. Ask me about the books in the shop. We've got them on the shelf. We've got the new stuff on the wall. And, look them up on Instagram and Twitter and say hi. All right, sir. Well, thank you very much. I'll be looking forward to the rest of the issues, and you enjoy your evening, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Ben. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Terry. Have a great night.
You too. Bye.